Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'm going to be doing a brake fluid flush on the BMW X5. So let's get started. BMW recommends the brake fluid is changed every 2 years. Most brake fluids are hygroscopic, which means they absorb moisture. Over time this can lead to corrosion in brake lines and in more extreme cases cause reduced braking performance because water has a lower boiling point compared to brake fluid. The brake fluid reservoir in a car is usually located on the firewall above the steering wheel column. On the X5 it is located under this plastic trim. Twist the latch 90 degrees anti-clockwise to unlock and remove. You might need to wriggle the latch if it is refusing to lift like it is on mine. I'm first going to check the existing brake fluid to see if it contains any moisture. To test the moisture content of brake fluid, you can buy a fluid detector tester pen from Amazon for about £6. I've put a link in the description if you want to purchase one. You basically set the pen to detect the dot fluid used, then insert the prongs into the brake fluid to see what percentage is water. This one I got off Amazon also includes a battery, which I think is great value for the price. The only bad point about this product is that the battery cover is not well designed, so I'm using a Stanley knife to gently open it up. When you first switch it on, it cycles through each type until you press it again. To set it to the fluid type you have in your car, hold down the button until the LED flashes on the correct category, then let go. Now it displays the green 0% moisture content LED because the prongs are dry. Pull off the cap to expose the prongs and insert it into the brake fluid reservoir. You don't need to submerge every part of the metal prongs, only the ends need to be covered so the detector can test the conductivity between them. Once inserted, press the button to switch on. Mine highlighted it is testing DOT4 before turning green to confirm the moisture content is 0%. Make sure not to drip brake fluid on any surfaces, or if you do, wipe it away immediately. Brake fluids are generally corrosive, so can damage the finish on paintwork, metal and certain plastics. Once you've finished with the detector pen, rinse it off with water. Although this is not testing the accuracy of the detector, you can see all the LED lights illuminated when water bridges the gap between the prongs. I've bought two 1 litre bottles of genuine BMW DOT4 brake fluid. The part number for this is linked in the description. BMW informed me that this brake fluid is used in all of their modern cars. You actually only need 1 litre to do a brake fluid service. I'll save the other for the next time. Brake fluid doesn't have an expiry providing you haven't broken the seal of the container. Once the container is opened, most manufacturers suggest to use it within 3 months. This is a list of the parts and equipment needed for a brake fluid service. A brake fluid moisture detection pen, although this is optional, 1 litre of brake fluid, the genuine BMW DOT4 and the part number here, brake bleeding kit, a turkey baster, car jack, axle stands if you want to take all the wheels off at once, a lever and a 17mm socket to take off the wheels, an 11mm socket to loosen the brake caliper bleed nipples, and then towels to catch or wipe away any spilt brake fluid. You can use the old two-person method of pumping the pedal whilst the other opens and closes the bleed nipples. However, I've opted to buy a brake bleeding kit so I can do it on my own. The one I've bought was £33 on Amazon and gets good ratings, so let's open it up and take a look at what's included. Here's the brake fluid slave bottle, a bag of parts, a lever to loosen or tighten the bottle cap, and the main bottle and pump. It has a little pressure gauge on the front, then a rubber cord to attach to the brake reservoir cap in the car. This looks to be a quick release mechanism. I think we'll have to see how well this seals when under pressure. The bottle has a pressure release valve on the back. Let's give that a quick test. Inside the bag is a cap for the catch bottle with a rubber adapter to connect to the bleed nipple, some instructions, a chain to hang the slave bottle around the caliper so that it does not hang from the bleed nipple connector, a spare rubber washer for the main bottle, and the brake reservoir cap that will connect to the hose from the main bottle. To use this bleed kit, I first need to fill the main pressure bottle with brake fluid. Unscrew the cap on the side, then pour in. I'm using a funnel so I can pour it in faster without worrying about spilling it. Now replace the cap and tighten. This needs to be tight to ensure air doesn't leak out when the bottle is pressurised. Before attaching the brake bleed pump to the car, first use a turkey baster to empty some of the existing fluid from the reservoir. This was a couple of quid from Amazon if you don't want to use the one from your kitchen. Make sure you pack cloths or paper towels around the reservoir to avoid spillages and have a container nearby to transfer the fluid into. Next, remove the wheel over the brake caliper you want to bleed first. The order of bleeding is usually the furthest away from the brake reservoir to the closest, so with this being a right-hand drive car, I'm starting with the left rear, then rear right, front left and finally front right. The rear calipers on this X5 only have one bleed nipple, which you can see here. Lift up the dust cap to expose the nipple. With this brake bleed kit being new, the rubber connector that connects to the nipple is stiff. You can put the car on axle stands if you want to take all wheels off at once, however for this video I'm doing them one at a time. Because this bottle can rest on the ground without pulling on the connector, I don't need to use the chain to suspend it. Now remove the cap from the reservoir and fit the cap supplied from the brake bleed kit. Make sure it's tight. Place the brake bleed bottle nearby. I'm using the engine cover which is flat enough for this task. Connect the quick release valve to the reservoir cap, then use the pump to start pressurising the bottle. You can see here it didn't take long for the fluid to start travelling through the hose into the reservoir. Once you reach that level, check the pressure gauge and then keep pumping until you increase the pressure by 10 psi or just over half a bar. I think this ensures enough pressure to push fluid through the pipes when you start bleeding each caliper, but not too high so that you start pushing fluid through the rubber seals connecting this bottle to the brake reservoir. Next, use a spanner to loosen the bleed nipple, which will allow the old brake fluid to flow through the brake lines, replacing it with the fresh brake fluid. As a rough guide, I'd suggest bleeding up to 200 ml through each caliper. Although the rears are slightly further away, the additional volume in brake lines will only account for about 5 ml per metre. You can see air bubbles in the pipe while the old brake fluid is draining, however it is flowing faster than it appears and is not a true indication of how much fluid is draining into the bottle. Once enough fluid has passed through, retighten the bleed nipple. There is a very subtle colour change between the old fluid and new. I'd imagine this colour change is more noticeable if the brake fluid hasn't been changed in a long time. I think this is because brake lines are usually made from copper and it must be a reaction between the brake fluid and copper pipe that causes it to darken over time. Once tight, remove the slave bottle, wipe up any drips from the bleed nipple and replace the dust cap. Next, I'll refit the wheel and move on to the right rear brake caliper. The torque setting for the BMW G05X5 is 140 Newton meters or 103 pound-foot. So I'm repeating the process on the back right caliper now. Removing the dust cap to expose the bleed nipple, attaching the slave bottle to the nipple, then unscrewing the nipple to allow the old brake fluid to be pushed through from the reservoir containing the new fluid. Once about 150 to 200 millilitres of fluid has passed through, I then close off the nipple. Remove the slave bottle connector from the nipple, then wipe away any brake fluid and replace the dust cap. That's both rear calipers done in about 10 minutes. Remember when tightening lug nuts on a 5-stud pattern to do them in order: 1, 3, 5, 2, 4. Next to bleed is the front left. These calipers have 2 bleed nipples, one here, then the other one here. I'm going to use the same principle of furthest to nearest, so I'll bleed the outer nipple first, then bleed the inner nipple after. This dust cap was refusing to lift, so I'm using a flathead screwdriver to gently release it. If any of your dust caps are damaged, you can purchase genuine replacements which are about £8 each. I've put the part number in the description. Now I've bled the front left caliper, some fluid has dripped onto it, so I'm going to quickly wipe that off so it doesn't damage the painted surface of the caliper. With that cleaned up, I'll put the dust cap back over the nipple. Now for the inner bleed nipple. The slave bottle doesn't touch the ground with the front caliper, so rather than leaving it hanging or using the bottle chain, I'm going to use a couple of bricks underneath because I have them close to hand. I think the supplied bottle chain is for mechanics that are using 2-post lifts, where you need to use it. Remember to check the brake fluid level in the main bleed bottle and that the pressure is still sufficient. After bleeding what I have so far, I'm just topping up the pressure to make sure it is still pushing fluid through at an acceptable rate. This inner bleed nipple is more difficult to access with the spanner I have. I'm having to flip it each time because there isn't enough turn without it fouling against the caliper. I'm not sure if a swan neck spanner would work better. Unfortunately, I don't have one to hand to test that. I've had to loosen it using the box end of the spanner before reattaching the slave bottle to release the old brake fluid. Now it's starting to flow out. This side doesn't need as much releasing because I've already done the majority through the outer bleed nipple. I'm now making sure the bleed nipple is properly tightened before cleaning up. And finally replacing the dust cap. Now that's all done, I'll refit the wheel, one more to go. Finally, the brake caliper nearest the master cylinder. That's enough for the outer bleed nipple. Make sure any spilt brake fluid is wiped off. And finally, the inner bleed nipple. There we go, that's all brake calipers bled. A quick wipe down before reattaching the dust cap. Now to finish, I just need to fit the wheel, so I'll shift everything out of the way and get that reattached. To remove the brake bleed kit, first release any remaining pressure from the bottle. Now disconnect the quick release connector from the brake reservoir cap. This is where you need a towel around it to ensure brake fluid isn't dripped onto parts that will be very hard to access and clean afterwards. This brake bleed kit has filled my reservoir to the brim, so I'm going to have to decant some of it to get it under the max fill marking on the side of the reservoir. Use the turkey baster to extract enough brake fluid to bring it under the max fill line. I'd somehow managed to misplace my baster, so I had to resort to using a smaller pipette. I'm not sure if this is what normally happens with the brake bleed kit. Either way, this is how you resolve the issue. Now the fill level is where it should be. Replace the trim panel. It has a couple of tabs that slot in at the back, then turn the plastic latch 90 degrees to lock in place. The rubber seal for the bonnet had moved on mine, so I'm just reattaching that. The last thing to do is reset the service warning in the car. Press the start-stop button 3 times in quick succession to put the car into diagnostic mode. Now hold in the BC button on the left stalk for about 15 seconds. It will now display what service types can be reset. A quick press of the BC button will cycle through what can be reset. Because it already has the brake fluid service selected, I just need to hold down the BC button until it prompts to confirm the reset. Now let go of the BC button, then hold down again until the reset in progress confirmation appears. The screen will confirm the reset was successful. Using iDrive, you can confirm from the menu by going into Car, Vehicle Status, then into Service Requirements. The brake fluid change warning should be set for 2 years after the day you reset it. You can see here the brake fluid looks a dirty yellow compared to the new brake fluid that replaced it. To maintain the condition of your brake bleed kit, you need to empty the unused brake fluid and wash it out ready for storage. I'm using the empty brake fluid bottle to store what wasn't used in the bleeding kit. To get it out of the hose, reattach the main bottle cap so that the bottle can seal. Give it a few pumps to pressurise the bottle. Put a towel under the reservoir cap, then attach the hose to it. I'm now pouring the old brake fluid from the slave bottle into the old container. To finish up, use some warm water to wash out all of the parts, then leave them to air dry before reattaching caps and storing away. Well guys, that's it for this video. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Subscribing's free and it just means any future videos I release will automatically appear on your feed without you having to search for them. Thanks again for watching and I'll see you on the next video.